you on? Yes. So let's begin by asking you, just tell us your name and how to spell it, and then where you were in the Peace Corps and the years.
So my name is Jakob Gowell, Jakob, Gowell, and I was in Kenzu, Cameroon, Central African, next to the Central African Republic, next to Nigeria, from June 1st of 2012 until I think the 16th of February 2014.
Okay. Now I'd like to ask you about where you grew up and your parents and siblings.
So I grew up in McMinnville, Oregon, about an hour southwest of Portland, Oregon.
Ooh.
I see the Multnomah Falls hat.
Yeah, we'll talk about this later.
My mom is from a small town in Nebraska, Ponca, Nebraska, and my father's from Falls Church, Virginia. And I have one older brother who is a fisheries biologist. He works in salmon restoration work.
Okay. Now, what did your father do?
My father was an attorney. He was sort of the black sheep of the family. His two sisters are both artisans. There's various pieces of art in the house from them. One's a potter, one's a weaver.
Okay. And did your mother have a job, or did she work in the house, or what?
She was primarily a stay-at-home mom, but also was a waitress and a florist and an incredibly avid gardener.
In McMinnville?
In McMinnville.
Okay. How long did you live in McMinnville?
I've kind of lived in McMinnville off and on quite a few times, kind of ventured out into the world and returned home. So I was there, born in 1989, lived there until I went to college in Iowa, central Iowa. And then I was back a little bit before I joined the Peace Corps, but then that was the next major thing I did. And then after the Peace Corps, I was back in McMinnville again, 2014 to 2015, when I took a job in Bend, Oregon, working in wilderness therapy, backpacking as a sort of a residential mental health treatment practitioner, but that treatment took place in the wilderness. And then I did a master's program in New York, and then I was back to McMinnville for a couple of years, kind of during the COVID times.
Good thing you like McMinnville so much.
I do. It's where all of my my immediate family is. My parents are still there. My brother and sister-in-law are there, and now their two young children are there.
Okay. When you were a kid, did you have any aspirations other than being maybe a cowboy or a football star?
My initial aspiration was an astronomer. Very clearly not an astronaut. Just wanted to look at them from afar, the stars. And then it sort of evolved into writing as a career, and then sort of as a direct result of some of my experiences in the Peace Corps, that kind of transformed into a desire to teach English language arts, and that's what my master's is in. And then I acquired some beliefs about motivation and the way we structure our education system, and that's pushed me in the direction of wanting to be a motivation researcher.
Okay. So, was there anybody that you would credit for being primarily responsible for pushing you, nudging you toward Peace Corps?
There was an information session, and I don't recall this person's name, but it was at my college, the spring of my senior year.
What college again?
Grinnell College,
Grinnell.
Central Iowa.
Okay.
And I don't think I mentioned that before. And he had been a Peace Corps volunteer and was like a really well-regarded staff. So I went to that information session, and one of the things he said is that there's no better time. In his mind, once you buy a couch, it becomes a lot harder to be a Peace Corps volunteer because you have to figure out what you're going to do with the couch while you're gone. And if you are just graduating from college, maybe you haven't purchased that couch yet, and you don't have to store it, and the modest possessions you have maybe fit still in your parents' residence, if you have that privilege.
Boy, I really like that.
Yeah, that was a good line.
Great, it's a great line. Yeah. But a person as young as you, I'm just wondering, what did you know about Peace Corps before you went to that session?
I think I've always had a sense of what the Peace Corps is and does, sort of in the most general sense. There's a close family friend who was a volunteer, I believe, in Costa Rica in the early 60s, within the first couple of years of the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Very close friend of my father's, and I probably heard him talk about it a number of times. And we still talk about it. He often writes about his experiences in sort of the memoir genre, and shares them with his local writing group in Prineville, Oregon. So I think I always had a sense of what it was, and had a sense coming out of my undergraduate years that maybe I had some skills and knowledge of the English language that would be useful. So that was sort of the thought that I had at the time. Okay.
So, and that was, when you say at the time, what do you mean?
I think I would view my own ability to contribute in the area of language teaching a little bit more modestly now than I might have as a 22-year-old.
But I mean, even before you went to college, did you talk to this person before you were in college about that? You said it was a family friend, I think. So you were a younger person listening. Now, what I'd like you to elaborate on, if you can, is when that person started talking about Peace Corps and you didn't know much about it, did you all of a sudden get, hey, I'm interested in this is something, or was it just more talk?
I don't think I could identify an epiphany. I think there was around that time I was really interested in learning more about my grandfather, who was a conscientious objector during World War II.
Wow.
And it's a little harder to be a conscientious objector during World War II than Vietnam, for example.
Absolutely.
And during that period of time, this is in the year between when I graduated from college and when I left for Cameroon, I think that was a time when I transcribed a bunch of my grandfather's letters that he was writing, first from the conscientious objector work camp, and then from a prison camp after he went AWOL, after he didn't get permission to go to a peace conference in Chicago. He wrote a letter to the head of the Selective Service, informing him that he was attending this conference due to his conscience, and here's the address where they could arrest him at for going AWOL.
Wow. What a guy.
Yeah, he was very principled. So I never met him. He died before I was born. So transcribing that set of letters was sort of the way I got to know him in a way that I couldn't have otherwise. And like, he was very passionate about his pacifism. He was very involved in the sort of the socialist co-op communities in Missouri and then in the DC area, which kind of went on to be a big part of his career. He worked at a co-op grocery store.
That was his job?
That was his job. Eventually, he pitched to the grocery store to add a furniture section to this little co-op grocery store, and they would work with the Scandinavian co-op furniture producers to import this
No.
Very high-end, modern Scandinavian furniture. His little co-op grocery store became the largest importer of Scandinavian, Danish furniture on the Eastern Seaboard for a while.
Wow, what a remarkable guy.
Yeah, truly.
You must have felt privileged to be able to go over his writing.
There's a lot of really great stuff in those letters. So when I was writing my own letters home, I think there was probably some resonance with that in terms of like what my goal was there.
I
But
think, no doubt.
overall, I think that was a big contributor at that time in my life to like an increasing belief in the importance of like pacifism as an ideology. I think I'm a little bit less clear on that now than I was in my early to mid 20s, but still very influential for me, and very influential for me going into the Peace Corps.
Okay. So getting back to the, was it a Peace Corps recruiter you were talking to?
Yeah, at the informational session. Yeah.
And he sort of galvanized your interest, right? Would you say that?
Yeah, that would be the event that I would identify as really starting the process. I think that's probably when I went back to my dorm room and opened the website and maybe started a version of the online application. And that was still when you couldn't choose the country you went to, like you can now.
Yeah. So when was this?
That would have been spring of 2011.
Okay. And when you wrote that letter, you sent it off then, or emailed it, whatever, to the Peace Corps?
What letter?
Well, I thought you went back to your room.
Oh, no, I just pull up the website and the application and start working on an application. I don't remember a letter.
Well, that's what I meant. You were applying at that point.
Thinking about it more seriously and working toward it, because at that time the application process was very involved.
Oh.
So it took, I think it was an average of 12 to 14 months from when you first started until when you were shipped off.
It's bounced all over the place, Jacob, I'll tell you.
I believe that.
From everybody that I've been talking to, almost everybody is at least slightly different. I mean, I've talked to a couple of people who applied and a week later, yeah, come on, get on the plane. Really, a week later.
Yeah, for me, I think it was 14 months. And there was a couple who was in my training group who said it was 2 years for them from when they first started the process to when they left.
Wow.
Because it's just harder logistically to place couples.
Yeah, oh yeah. So you started the process and it took about a year and a half?
14 months.
14 months.
So close to a year and a third, a year and a fourth.
Okay. And what all did this entail?
So I have some fairly murky memories of this. I think there was an initial application which included some essay sections, some questions about your expertise so that they could determine what kind of your area was.
Yeah.
And mine was the TEFL, Teaching English as a Foreign Language.
How did you come to think of yourself as an expert in that at the age of 22?
I don't know that even then I would have called myself an expert at it. I think the commentary from the Peace Corps was that if you have a literature degree, an English literature degree, then that is one of the things that would qualify you as somebody who could be trained to be a Teaching English as a Foreign Language volunteer.
Okay.
So that was sort of one of the explicit things that was like the credential that I had that matched what they were looking for. Today, do I think that should be all that they look for? Maybe not. I think maybe they could be a little bit more selective around having people with teaching experience.
Wouldn't hurt. Wouldn't hurt.
There's some other challenges that we might get to later in terms of cross-cultural experience in the education system here in the States versus in other places that I think didn't necessarily set me up for success or people in my similar situation in general. But
but you saw yourself as a teacher of
yeah.
English as a foreign language in some country.
Yeah, that's what I was, the kind of volunteer I was applying to be from the start.
Let me ask you this: if they didn't give you a choice or choices for where you wanted to go, did you just put it in anyway? Oh, and by the way, I really want to go to these 3 places.
So there was, it's a little bit of a funny story around where I ended up. I have a cousin who is also a returned Peace Corps volunteer. She was in Lesotho.
When was she in? Before you or after you?
Before me.
Okay.
She's 6 or 8 years older than I am. So she had wanted Cameroon, where I ended up. And I had taken a bunch of French courses in high school and then at the university level. So I was, part of the reason I was a desirable candidate was my proficiency speaking French. I would say that going into the Peace Corps, I had a lot of academic French ability, and coming out of it, I was truly conversational.
Great.
So it was a lot easier for me to build on top of that once that prior experience in speaking French once I got there. I didn't list a preference. I remember there being a place where you could say, I'm willing to go anywhere. And at that time, the preference that you listed, it wasn't, I want to go to Cameroon. It was, I want to go to Eastern Europe or Sub-Saharan Africa. Right, a regional preference. And I don't think I listed one. And I also think I indicated that I would be willing to go wherever they would send me.
Okay. So how long did it take after you sent that in, submitted it, before you heard anything?
I don't recall the timeline. I think it was some months. I do remember being called to complete an interview in Portland. Until recently, it was the only parking ticket I'd ever received in my life, parking exceeding the time I'd paid for in the Portland State University parking lot, because that's where the interview was kind of conducted on campus.
Probably a pretty expensive ticket.
I think it was $30 or something.
Yeah.
And I remember from that interview, one of the questions, I'm not 100% certain about my memory on this, but I'm fairly certain that one of the things that came up in the conversation was like my willingness to go to somewhere where there might not be toilet paper. And it could be that I brought it up in response to a more general question. And I think I remember a comment from the recruiter afterward that he was a little bit hesitant about my candidacy, maybe until that part of the conversation.
Until you said that?
Until I, somehow it came out that that wouldn't bother me that much. I would figure out how to adapt. And that I had maybe that indicated more of a concrete level of understanding of the kinds of challenges that you might face at just the most basic logistic level.
I think so.
Because I think there might be a lot of people who would consider the Peace Corps, but they're considering it at these high levels of want to make a contribution to the world, etc., but not at the level
of basics.
Right. Are you going to a place that has toilet paper,
right,
or running water, or electricity?
Yes.
And I actually had access to all of those things intermittently. I was in a fairly comfortable place relative to a lot of my fellow volunteers throughout
Yeah,
the
but
rest
the,
of
the interesting thing to me right now is that you said that not ever having been in a situation where there wasn't toilet paper, where there wasn't electricity, and
Sure.
so forth and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So what gave you the confidence to say that right in the very beginning when you really didn't even know?
Spent a lot of time camping.
Hmm?
That probably helped quite a bit.
Yeah, that would. Quite a bit of time, yes. I think that's true. All right, so that was a plus for as far as the Peace Corps was concerned.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else that they asked about or you volunteered, which you think enhanced your chances? What about French?
That's the other thing that I would identify as really boosting my application. Having prior experience with French, I am not sure, based on whatever the candidate pool, that I would have been accepted without that skill set.
Yeah. Did you know anybody? Well, you knew your cousin who'd been in the Peace Corps,
And the family friend.
Yeah. Had you talked and a family friend? Had you talked to your cousin about her time?
Not a conversation that I could really pinpoint.
Okay. So, not a substantial.
And I think right around the time I was, so that cousin was a volunteer, I think, in the late 2000 aughts, and then had returned to South Africa to complete a master's degree in development. She still works in sort of the, generally speaking, the area of development. She's done a lot of work remotely, helping with plans, serving various offices, I think, in the government of South Africa.
Okay.
But I think she was still at that time not a volunteer, but I think away in her master's program around when I left.
Oh, all right. Did you speak to anybody else who had been a Peace Corps volunteer before you left? And I mean in a substantive way.
Well, I think there was a going away party by the time I had decided to go, and there were a number, I believe, of return volunteers. My family friend, and he also, this is my dad's friend, and he also has some friends that are sort of acquaintances of our family that live in Corvallis. And I think they came to that event because they were also return volunteers, and I had an opportunity to chat with them just on the eve of my departure, so to speak.
Boy, that must have been interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get drunk that night?
No. No.
I would have had the tendency to get carried away. Here I'm about to leave, and here are all these people who've done it, and I've got 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, after you applied, when you said it was 14 months, right? 14
Correct.
months. All right. What did you get a call or a letter or what?
I think it was a letter at that time. If it wasn't a letter, it was an online portal where they posted your acceptance. Might have been both. So you get the letter in the mail, but you can check it before then if you take the initiative. And I remember I still have that buried deep in storage somewhere, probably at my parents' house in Oregon. Some tub in the garage of the packet, the information packet that had all of these things that you needed to know and logistical steps. Because after you were accepted There were, I think, there was a dental exam that you needed to have completed, a medical exam to be cleared, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these very concrete steps that you would need to do to turn the acceptance into a departure date.
Right. Okay. Did they reveal in that where you were going?
I believe so.
Did you know anything about?
I knew very little about Cameroon at that time, but I certainly looked up a whole bunch of things pretty quickly after that.
Mm-hmm. When you got the notice and you saw you were accepted, was that a cause for celebration or concern or what?
It was absolutely a cause for celebration.
Okay. And you saw it was Cameroon, and you didn't know much about that, but you
Correct.
could find out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things about Cameroon, though, is it has the nickname of Africa in miniature.
I hadn't heard that.
Any biome that you can find on the continent, pretty much, you can find in Cameroon. So, knowing that you're going to Cameroon doesn't necessarily prepare you for understanding what the conditions are of your post. Because there's a really wide range from the extreme north, where you would have Saharan type climates, to the western region where you might have very jungle-like conditions of Congo.
Okay. And we can talk about this later or now, but talking about these regional differences, would that apply to what the people did? How they lived? Were there differences? And okay.
Well, some of it was just regional ethnic differences. So Cameroon is composed of 10 regions. I probably couldn't name them all. There's the east, let's see if I can. The east, the west, the northwest, the Adamawa, the north, the extreme north, the center region, the littoral region, the southwest. Maybe I got something in there twice. I was in the east. It was, I believe, the east might be the largest of the provinces with the least population.
Why is that?
It's a lot of jungle, and the part of it I was sort of in the band of the eastern region that is the border between the savanna and the jungle. So I was in mixed savanna jungle. You have patches of forest and then patches of like grassy meadow.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds like an ideal for a Peace Corps volunteer. That's the kind of thing I used to think of when I envisioned going into Peace Corps.
Yeah,
just what you described.
That makes sense. And I was on the border. I was 7 kilometers from the border with the Central African Republic, which will become more relevant to the conversation.
Yeah.
The Cameroon overall, as I understand it, at least at the time, was something like approximately 60% Christian, approximately 35% Muslim, and then miscellaneous for the remaining portion of the population. Where I lived, there was a pretty decent mix. I think it was probably leaning more Christian than the overall composition of the country. In part because a lot of the Muslim population of the country was concentrated in the Adamawa, the north, and the extreme north.
Okay.
But there was still a large Muslim population, primarily in 2 groups. One were the herders, the Mbororos, and the other were a multinational group of people who sold at the marketplace. There was a big wholesale market in my post that folks would come over from the Central African Republic, load up huge trucks, and take goods back into the CAR for resale.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a big resale market, hugely disproportionate to the size of my post in terms of the amount of commerce that was going on.
Yeah.
And then you had the logging trucks going the other way, taking the rainforests to the coast.
Yeah.
On the back of the trucks.
When you got the word and you knew you were going to go in,
Mm-hmm.
did any family members or friends try to dissuade you from this?
No, nobody tried to dissuade me, but I think both of my parents were a little bit leery about me going. I think they would tell you that they were anxious about what my situation would be and would I be safe.
Did they, if when they thought about you going there, you were
Mm-hmm.
going to a jungle?
No, because I didn't know at that point.
You didn't know.
I didn't know what my post was going to be. The posts were assigned, I think, about 2/3 of the way through the training, 3 months of training at the beginning of my time there.
Yeah.
And until then, until they were assigned, we had no clue.
Okay. So they were a little concerned, but were not trying to stop you from going.
No.
All
They
right.
they ended up visiting me.
Oh, great. Great. So, when did you leave, and did you go to either Philadelphia or DC?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
And then from Philadelphia, we took a little flight to JFK. No, that's wrong. We took a bus from Philly to JFK, and we departed from JFK.
Okay.
That would have been, I think, I flew to Philadelphia on like the 28th or 29th of May. And then I think we got on a plane bound for Cameroon with stop in Brussels on the 31st, and I think we arrived on the 1st of June.
Okay. How long were you in Philadelphia? Did you do anything substantive there?
Yeah, so we had the pre-service conference, the little bit of training that they give you in Philadelphia. I think the plane ticket I had to travel to Philadelphia was just because of the nature of the flight and the time I needed to be in Philadelphia. I arrived a day before a lot of the other volunteers, just because of coming from Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a number of people who were coming from Oregon, from close by. I mentioned a couple earlier. There was a couple that went from Portland, and then there was one other person. His name's Benjamin Merrill. He also, I think we might have been put in a room together.
I think Oregon has a high number of returned Peace Corps volunteers.
I wouldn't
Did you
be
know
surprised.
that? I think that's right. Higher than you would have thought from where it is and its size and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I might be a little less surprised by that, given the political makeup of Oregon's population centers. But
yeah. Okay. So then you flew from JFK to where?
Brussels
Brussels.
initially, and then the way you get to Yaoundé, you go from Brussels to Douala, which is the largest city. They talk of Douala as the economic capital of Cameroon. And it was the same plane. We just stayed in our seats on the plane while people getting off at Douala deplaned. And then we continued on to Yaoundé, which they would call the political capital. Cameroonians would call New York the economic capital of the U.S.
Okay. So you're visiting with all of these people from all over the country as you're in Philadelphia, and then when you get there, What were those conversations like? Was this nervous chatter, or was it?
I don't know that I actually have a lot of recollection about those. I'm sure there was some, as we call it, nervous chatter. What's really stuck in my mind more than the time in Philadelphia, there was a meal that we went to. I remember that we got preloaded. They weren't gift cards. They were little like credit card type things with the per diem that we got.
Oh,
we got so much for however many days we were going to be in Philadelphia. And if you didn't use it, it went away. And I remember not using all of my stuff. And I think we went out for drinks, sort of the eve of departure.
Mm-hmm.
The whole group coordinated to go out to a restaurant together. But I have very little recollection of that. And not because I was intoxicated, because I don't think that's the reason.
Yeah.
Although there was some of that later in country. What sticks in my mind more is sort of the earliest times from after we arrived in Cameroon.
Tell me about those.
So I remember the very specific hotel. I've got like an image of it burned into my mind that we were at. I remember because we arrived early in the morning at the airport. It must have been, it wasn't 6 a.m., but it was like a 10 a.m. arrival. So we had a full day of logistics ahead of us in country. And that evening we had, and for the next couple of days, we had a bunch of stuff to do in the capital before we went to our training site.
Mm-hmm.
So we had meals catered at the hotel, breakfasts and dinners. And I remember the first dinner, there was a hot sauce, we'd call it piment, which is just the French word for like a pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically a spicy pepper. And I remember eating it. It was a really great flavor, but I was like literally crying from the heat of this hot sauce.
Uh-huh.
And I think other people thought of me as a little bit more brave than perhaps they were. I still enjoy that kind of hot sauce.
Okay. And you weren't in the capital very long before you went to your training site.
I think it was just shy of a week is what I want to say.
Well.
I think we
Were you in any kind of culture shock when you first got there? And you were looking around and
absolutely
seeing all this?
One of the things I remember pretty vividly looking out from the hotel one of those mornings was somebody trying to load a pig on a motorcycle. And we're talking like a couple 100 pounds worth of pig on the back of a motorcycle, and the pig was not happy.
How were they going to secure a pig on the back of a motorcycle?
Poorly. It's not the weirdest thing I've seen on the back of a motorcycle, although, it's whole families, where you have a driver and a wife and 5 kids behind them.
Oh.
Maybe it's only 4 kids if you count the wife, but like 5 or 6 people all crammed onto a motorcycle. Or one other time I saw 2 people on a motorcycle transporting a motorcycle on the motorcycle. So you've got one that's sort of perpendicular on the seat, and the guy in the back has got his arms over the motorcycle that they're hauling, and then you got the driver in front. So motorcycles were a major mode of transportation.
Did they have sidecars?
No, not that I ever recall seeing.
Did they pull any kind of conveyance that you could load stuff in?
Not that I remember with motorcycles.
Okay.
There were a lot of push carts for moving goods around. That was mostly in sort of smaller places like the post I ended up at. But in that first week, we were doing things like getting our national ID card and I think there were a number of vaccinations that we needed to take. There were various training sessions that it was just easier to accomplish having us all in the capital and doing it at the national headquarters, just because it involved the country director. And I think there were also things that we were doing in that first week that were efforts to introduce us to the culture and sort of ease us in. I remember going to like a Cameroonian dance performance.
Yeah.
And I think the dance performance was put on by the wife of a returned volunteer, although maybe calling him returned isn't that accurate, because he was a volunteer who had gone on to work for Peace Corps. He had originally been posted in the same post I ended up at, and he had married someone from there. So that his wife was sort of the leader of the dance troupe that was performing for us that week.
Okay. So it sounds like it was a pretty good week. How many were you there? 30 or 40?
I want to say between the two, close to 30. So the way Peace Corps Cameroon was operating at that time was I think we were fairly uncommon in the list of countries globally, in that we had volunteers from every of the 5 major areas in the country. So we had youth development volunteers, we had education volunteers, we had medical volunteers, we had economic development volunteers, and we had agricultural development volunteers. And the way they ran it is there were 2 groups that they brought in every year, and one of the groups was focused on education and economic development. So that was my cohort. And then the other part of the year they brought in the youth development, agricultural development, and medical volunteers. So I think we were fairly evenly split. There might have been a few more education than economic development, but I think we were close to 40.
Okay. Did you give, I think I know the answer to this, but did you give any consideration to switching to one of the others early on?
One of the other areas?
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever heard of anybody doing that where we were. No, I wouldn't say that I did.
Did any of the group of 30 leave before the week was over?
I think we had somebody leave by about day 2 or 3.
What happened?
I think she had a partner that she missed horribly.
And just could not go on without that partner, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So the rest of you were you all going to the same region, or were you going to be dispersed throughout Cameroon, your group?
We would eventually be dispersed, but after that first week, all of us as a cohort went to our training site, which was in Bafia, and we would spend the next 3 months together before going to our posts.
All right, let's talk about Bafia.
Pineapple capital of Cameroon, which a lot of the time I talk about my Peace Corps experience. One of the reasons I kind of bring it up in conversation is that I think it takes a lot less for me to be happy now than it might have before. Just my general life standards are all lower.
After Peace Corps.
After Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Particularly in the area of transportation. It takes a lot less for me to be very happy because of how uncomfortable moving around Cameroon can be.
Oh, yeah. And you have riveting memories of that, I'm sure.
Well, I had to go, after I ended up at my post, I would need to go to the regional capital, which is an 8-hour bus ride split into 2 4-hour legs, about once every month to month and a half. That's where the closest bank was. So it's where I needed to get my living stipend to be able to have money for food and pay my landlord. The exception to me having just generally lower life expectations is that my pineapple expectations are higher as a result of me
you
being
know a
in
good
Bafia.
pineapple when you taste one.
I don't know that I've encountered a pineapple that's as good as the pineapple in Bafia, Cameroon, since then.
So you're a pineapple snob?
I just have high standards.
Okay.
But Bafia is great. We were all placed with host families.
How large is it? What do they do there besides grow pineapple?
I think that's probably their major economic
That's it?
thing. I wouldn't say that's it. I think it's a fairly large town in that region, but I think it's
100,000?
Certainly north of 50.
Okay.
I think my understanding is that Cameroon overall is about 20 million people,
All right.
or at least at the time. That was what I remember the estimate being.
Cameroon is pretty small in land area, right?
It's about the size of California.
Oh, well, that's okay. That's helpful.
Mhm.
Yes. All right.
It's a little bit of a different shape.
Yeah.
There's they think of it as chicken shape. There's a way you can kind of draw a chicken out of the outline of Cameroon.
All right. So Bafia is about 50,000 or so.
North of that, I wouldn't be
North
confident
of
that
that.
is 50,000, but north of that.
And most people that live there are farming.
A lot of my understanding of Bafia was limited to spending time at the training building, going back and forth from the training building to my my host family, because we had curfews. So our exposure to the city of Bafia was actually fairly limited.
Okay.
There were restrictions on where we could go. I think from a safety perspective.
Who imposed the restrictions?
Peace Corps administration.
Okay. And did Peace Corps also impose the curfews?
Yes. And that was also related to safety. I happened to be at the end of the road. I was sort of one of the volunteers who was who had the farthest homestay location, and beyond that there was a road that was like forbidden at night. Like you can't go down there. Sometimes people get robbed. But if you were out during the day, it was fine.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So we're not talking about roving gangs here. We're talking about
Crimes of
thieves.
crimes of opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there was also just a general rule that if you're traveling in the country, you can't travel at night. So you need to be where you're going during daylight hours.
Okay. And that was Peace Corps thinking. That
Yeah.
wasn't
Correct.
Cameroon thinking.
That's Peace Corps policy.
Okay. All right. So you spent 3 months there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What did you learn?
Various things about teaching methods, and a lot of cross-cultural information. There's also information that they gave us about medical situations that we might encounter. There was around the time,
Like malaria?
yeah, for example,
Mhm.
signs and symptoms, things we would need to look out for. They actually issued all of us malaria medication proactively because they didn't want us to need to figure out the logistics of getting it if we had symptoms and lived in a remote area. There was at least one volunteer who had like a 20 or 30 kilometer motorcycle ride because the only way to get to her post was like a single trail that you traversed in a motorcycle to get out to the post. So we all had, I think it was called Coartem was the medication, and then I think there were certain places that if you were remote enough, and I don't think this was every post, but I think mine was included, where they gave us something called Cipro, which is an antibiotic to have on hand in case we needed it.
Okay, so there's that kind of protection, proactive protection.
Yeah.
And then you were learning. Were you learning a dialect or a language?
So the language training piece was two-tiered. So everybody needed to learn a certain level of French.
First of all, who spoke French over there? Are the Cameroonians speaking French?
Most all Cameroonians speak French in the Francophone regions. And I was just about to mention this.
Okay.
8 out of those 10 regions that I mentioned are Francophone.
Okay.
And that is a legacy of colonialism post-World War I.
All right.
Pre-World War I, Cameroon was a German colony. Post-World War I, it got partitioned into an Anglophone region, which was administered by the UK as a UK colony. And the other 8 regions were administered by France. So that's where you get 2 of the 10 regions are Anglophone, and often thought of as relatively more well off. And then 8 of the 10 are Francophone. And I don't think there's much love lost for the French. There's a lot of sentiment that the Germans came in and they built stuff to last, and the French came in and they were extractive in the way they approached natural resources in Cameroon.
But the remnant is that they spoke French.
Yes. And today, English and French are the 2 national languages.
Is that right?
Yep.
Well, I was going to ask you, was there any movement that you were aware of by people saying, let's get rid of this French, we don't want French, we want our own language?
No, I think partly because there's too many. I think what I remember is there's somewhere, I want to say 260 languages in Cameroon. It's either 60 or 260.
Yeah.
The number 60 sticks in my mind. It'd be fairly easy to look up, but there's just so many what we would call patois, or mother tongues.
Mother tongues.
In the very literal sense, the language that your mother's teaching you, as opposed to the language that you might learn in school.
And let's see if this is correct. So you're in one town, and you're speaking a dialect there, and then you wander down the road to another place, and you might be speaking a completely different dialect to be understood.
Often, if you're going that far, it might not be completely different. It might be mutually intelligible. So you might call it dialect differences versus language differences. I'm not a linguist, so I'll leave it to the linguists to talk about where it would be a separate language. But
right.
There would be pretty significant language barriers as you travel through the country.
To your conversation. I mean, when you want to find out where the restaurants are, and you ask in this language, and they're going, huh? What?
Well, and this speaks to a little bit of the training approach. So as I mentioned, everybody learns French. Not everybody's actually posted to a French place, but the idea is that if you're traveling around the country, even if you are posted to an Anglophone region, French is still important in case you're in the capital. You need to travel to the capital.
Okay. So you were learning French during your in-country training?
You have to demonstrate a certain level of proficiency in French, and once you did that, you might continue your French lessons, but you would supplement your French lessons with one of the other language offerings.
Okay.
Often that was Pidgin English, or Fulfulde, are sort of the two big other options. Fulfulde is a regional language, not regional to Cameroon, regional in a larger sense in that you can find it from Senegal, the Gambia, all the way over to Chad, and then down into Cameroon. It's in Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria. Fulfulde, also known as Fula or Fulani, it's got a lot of speakers.
And it didn't resemble English or French.
No,
right?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay.
No. About the only thing I can do now is order an omelet in Fulfulde. But it's not a Bantu language, which is sort of the language family that you see a lot in Central Africa. The post I ended up at, again, it's called Kenzu, has sort of the hyper-local language is called Kako. It's got about 50,000 speakers, and probably 10 to 15,000 of them are either at my post or in sort of the surrounding rural areas.
Mm-hmm. So you had to learn that too.
I didn't learn it.
You didn't?
I did not. I mostly learned Fulfulde and spoke French. But also I was functioning as an English teacher. So it was rare for me to encounter somebody who I couldn't converse with in French.
Okay. So you didn't feel unprepared or threatened or anything like that? You were...
For language challenges, no.
Okay. All right. Let's see, what else? Oh, you said you learned some new teaching strategies or techniques?
Another big component of the training time was a summer school. So we led summer school lessons to get practice in teaching.
Okay.
One of the classroom management was a big topic of conversation, and I think that was really one of the biggest challenges of being an education volunteer. Also, for the education volunteers, there were two groups. I talked about how our cohort had economic development and teaching. Within teaching, there were the folks who were coming to teach IT, basically computer skills, and the folks who were coming to teach English language. So sometimes we would be separated out. And a lot of the IT teaching folks went to the English-speaking regions. I'm not sure if it was all of them, but most of them. And there were differences in the education systems between the place that sort of had the legacy of the UK versus the legacy of the French education system. And that came out in things like the way you graded stuff was out of 20. So at the end of a semester, like if you get an 18 out of 20, that's a really superb, stellar grade.
Okay. Now, during your 3 months there, did you have any doubts yourself about continuing? And if you did, why?
I think most of my doubts came later.
Later, okay. Well, we'll get to those later then.
Sure.
So you felt fairly confident that you could do this when you were in your in-country training?
I think I might separate out I can do this from I can do this well. So I think at that point I had a level of confidence that I could do it, and maybe this is some of hindsight leaking in.
Maybe.
I think there may have already at that time been questions about how well I would do at it.
But you weren't getting that impression from other people, were you?
No, I wouldn't
your
say
teachers
so.
Or your
No.
other trainees?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. And was everybody else pretty much like you, or did anyone leave during the 3 months?
I think we had at least one other person leave, but it was a medical issue. I think she developed Ball's palsy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which is pretty random, not a
Yeah,
very
it's
common
very
thing
random, yeah.
to have happen. That's the only other person that comes to mind for me who left,
Okay,
at least during the training period.
all right. So at the end of the 3 months, did you have any kind of ceremony or anything?
Yeah.
What was that like?
We had our swearing-in ceremony, and that was a pretty big function. A thing that happens in Cameroon often to commemorate big events is you'll have a set of clothing made or a shirt tailored, often in the same kind of fabric. So everybody, we had like a little committee of people who chose the fabric that we were all going to have something made from.
Yeah.
And then we were all in sort of matching outfits.
You mean like a shirt?
For some people it was a shirt, for some people it was a dress. You bought the fabric and then you took it to a tailor and told them what you wanted. And the style that you wanted, and you know.
Oh, I think that's a very, very neat idea.
It's fun.
Yeah.
I actually have some things here that I had tailored. Maybe I'll hold them up in front of the camera at some point. None of the stuff that I have was from the swearing-in ceremony.
Okay.
I believe I do still have that. I think back in Oregon.
Okay. So then you found out where you were going to go, and it was Kenzu?
Kenzu.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How far away was that? Not only in kilometers, but also in
I don't know in
other
kilometers.
or miles.
Well, actually, there's a picture here. Let me consult this.
Yeah.
Usually they have. Well, I can't read it. So this is a picture of sort of the map that they have in the center of every town or in lots of places, and
Here we go.
at the bottom you can kind of see it gives distances. It's looking like it might be about 900 kilometers to what I would guess is the capital of Cameroon. I remember that cumulative driving time, it was 5 hours in a bus from the national capital to the regional capital in Bertoua. So that would be Yaoundé to Bertoua. And then from Bertoua to the equivalent of the county seat, which is called Baturi. That was another 4 hours, and then you would continue on that bus for 4 hours to get to Kenzu, right on the border, 7 kilometers from the Central African Republic.
This would be a good time for you to describe the bus and what it was like.
Well, there were 2 different kinds of buses.
This is not a Greyhound bus.
The first one was a lot like a Greyhound bus. The
Really?
road from the national capital to the regional capital was new and well paved, and most of the time it felt like you were driving through the rainforest. It was very jungle-like. Some of the points it was like you were on kind of the mountain looking down into like jungle valleys.
Yeah.
Other parts you were driving through sort of major population areas, and I have a very clear picture of it in my mind, but it's a little harder to describe. And then when you got to Bertoua, there was a Case de Passage, which was like a transit house that the Peace Corps rented, and if you had business in Bertoua, you could go stay at that house.
Mm-hmm.
And it became like a social scene as well for people who were coming through. Maybe volunteers from other regions who were visiting the East, which is, I think, one of the least visited regions. I think it was relatively infrequent to get visitors. and then people from all over the region who would have business in the regional capital. And those are the folks that I would see much more often. And then the bus from the regional capital to my post, we called them prison buses.
Why is that?
They were all old Renaults. And they were called prison buses because there was a cab with 3 seats. There was a driver's seat, a middle seat, and a window seat. And they would almost without fail have 4 people in those 3 seats.
Uh-huh.
And typically, if I was a person of some status in the community.
Because you were white.
Because I was white, because I was a teacher, because I was American. All 3 of those would have contributed.
Okay.
And I just had friends. So they tried, whenever I was traveling on those buses, they often sort of like pushed me to ride in the front cab because it was seen as more comfortable.
Was that embarrassing for you or not?
Sometimes I would say, try and argue with them and say it wasn't necessary. But I also think they kind of got a kick out of helping the person that they saw was important, because then that's like a connection to me.
Right.
There were 3 different bus companies, and all of the bus companies had the same kinds of buses, these old Renaults, and they were probably 40 to 50-year-old vehicles. And not a one of them had a functioning ignition. So they were all push start, and if you pop the clutch.
Yeah, right.
And if you have to stop at the wrong place along the road, then the passengers might have to get out and push.
Help. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes you'd pick up passengers in the very rural areas, just like the little hamlets, villages. Sometimes it's just a couple of houses, mud brick houses. And if you wanted to be picked up in those places, you would stand by the road, and the bus would slow down. But the bus isn't stopping.
So you got to run. And
you gotta catch it as it goes by.
I'm familiar with that.
And in the back, so there's the front area, and then there's a grate. And the grate is why we called them prison buses, because it's like the division between the people who are driving the prisoners and the prisoner section. Yeah. So in the back there were often there were either 4 or 5 rows of benches.
Uh-huh.
And in each row it would have 2 seats, and then a 5th flip down seat. So you would walk in, sit in your spot, and then once all those other 4 spots had been taken, somebody would walk in, flip down the seat, and it would be a 5th person in the middle, and there's no aisle anymore.
Yeah.
And that was true for all of the rows except maybe the very last row. And those rows of 5 people in the back, you didn't really have enough space for everybody to have their shoulders flat to the back of the seat. So you ended up having somebody's shoulder on top of yours, or your shoulders under theirs.
Uh-huh.
And most of these buses didn't have windows, and these are dirt roads, like red clay dirt roads. So you're kicking up orange dust.
Coming in and coating you.
In part because you're sweating.
Yeah.
And you're sweating on your neighbor, and your neighbor's sweating on you because you're cramped in there so much.
Did you also have chickens and pigs riding with you?
On top. I don't know about pigs. Pigs were just less common, I think, because of the Muslim population. There was less demand.
Yeah.
I think often the Muslim population, I mentioned the 2 different groups, the merchants and the herders. The Mbororos were herders, and they had cattle. The Mbororos were poor. The merchants were the wealthiest part of the population in my post, and they often were driving the demand for beef. So you have this wealthier Muslim part of the population that they're not interested in pork. So there was just less demand for pigs. Not that they weren't around, but the Christian community was relatively less affluent than the Muslim merchants.
Okay.
So I think they probably wouldn't have had the budget to buy pork particularly often.
All right.
Certainly not with the frequency of people buying beef.
Well, that's a very good description of the transportation system there. Next, I want to talk to you about your assignment and where you were working, who you were working with, what you were supposed to be doing, all that.
So I was a teacher of English at the Lycée Classique de Kanzu. So this is the public high school in my town. At the time I started, it was the only high school. Within about a year and a half, there was a second school that was open that was supposed to be a technical school, sort of a trade school. And they also had English classes. And there was a second Peace Corps volunteer who was posted to teach English.
Oh, so you were with another Peace Corps officer?
For a portion of it. When I first arrived, there was another volunteer. He was a medical volunteer. And then, well, I guess it was health education was the actual designation.
In the city where you were?
And then he changed posts, and then I was alone for about 6 months. And then, so I had a postmate for probably 5 months. I was alone for 6 months, and then the rest of my time, I think another 6 or 7. It was 20 and a half total.
Okay.
So whatever the numbers work out to, the rest of my time I had the postmate.
Okay. So you weren't totally cut off from Americans. There were a few around.
For that 6 month period of time, if I was at my post, I was.
Oh, okay.
There was one other white person in town, an elderly French nun. I interacted with her very rarely, though.
What was she there for?
She's at the Catholic mission.
Oh, all right. Okay. Well, I think that's good. That I think it's not the Peace Corps experience that I would have wanted to have been around a lot of other volunteers. I was totally isolated when I was, and I liked it that way.
I think it was a good mix. I think I appreciated the times I had a postmate, and I appreciated the times I didn't have a postmate. And even when I did, often I would go a week without seeing them.
Did your postmate, the first one, that person had been there a while, right?
So he had come in the cohort before me. So my cohort, I think, he would have come in, I think, February, and I came in June.
Oh, so not too much time.
Not too much time.
Okay. So you were assigned to a high school, and what were the ages of the students in the high school?
So it doesn't quite match our system. So the high school was grades what we would call 6 through 12. So I taught the 6th grade English class, and then I kind of changed around some of the others. I taught the senior year English class once, and there was just a huge amount of attrition. The 6th grade class that I had, 60 students, and then the senior year class was like 4 students.
You had one class that was 60 and another was 4?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the attrition as you move from 6th grade to senior year.
That many drop out? Is that a good indicator?
I don't know if it would be consistent over other years, but for that year, that was a pretty good indicator.
What's also happening? Where are they going?
Probably a lot of them are working by that point. I probably would have had a lot more insight into what's happening around that time. I think some of that knowledge I've just forgotten in the time since then. I think this is the 11th year I've been back, which is kind of strange to say now.
Yeah, must seem strange to you.
And this is probably the most I've thought about it in a long time.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm happy that you are thinking about it now.
Me too.
So, let's see. How did you find out what you were going to be doing? Did you report to like a principal, and the principal said, "Okay, Jacob, this is what we've got lined up for you"?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when I was posted to the location, like the thing I was there to provide was English teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something I knew going in, that what I would be doing is teaching English at the public high school to any number of grades. I think I had 4 at any given time. So I think I had like a 10th, 11th, 12th grade load, and then the 6th grade load. And the 10th, 11th, 12th was much easier to manage. Those classes ranged from like 20 to 15. The senior was 4, but the sophomores, juniors were more in the 20 range. And this is pulling from a town of about 10,000 people.
Mm. That's what Kenzu was?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Until just before I left. There was a refugee crisis just before I left, and it doubled in size overnight.
Yeah.
Not literally overnight, but not far from it.
Yeah. So, wow. Well, teaching kids that are in 6th, 7th, and 8th, teaching them English is a little different than teaching some who are in the 11th and 12th.
Mm-hmm.
How, were you a wizard? Did you just know it all, or how did you accommodate such a wide margin of people?
Well, one of the challenges was that the classes were part of a curriculum that had assigned textbooks. So one of the things I was supposed to do was teach from the textbook, and that would have,
Did the students all have textbooks?
well, that would have been convenient if students, for the most part, had the money to buy the textbooks, but
Yeah.
very few did. So you're trying to do what you can to teach in a way that doesn't require that the students own the materials. Often that took the form of sort of lecturing and exercises in the classroom, and I think I touched on this very briefly earlier, that I had doubts that came up. Those doubts were primarily about my effectiveness in the classroom.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the value of my experience ended up coming from the informal conversations I had with friends in the marketplace. I don't know if this was sort of the framework you were given as a volunteer, but when I first started, and this would be from the time in Philadelphia, one of the things they did mention that I didn't remember earlier, but now I'm remembering it, is this sort of graph of how you can expect to feel. Of like, you feel very optimistic and confident, and then you have these dips, and they're predictable, and they recur. So it's not just you get confident, you stay confident, or you have doubts and then you overcome them and never again.
Yeah.
That's not the situation. You sort of have this repeating pattern, and that's within the context of Peace Corps' 3 goals. One was to provide skilled labor. Is this familiar to you?
Yes.
So the skilled labor was the teaching in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other 2 were to educate Cameroonians about Americans,
Mm-hmm.
and educate Americans about Cameroonians. And
Right.
by the time I finished in Cameroon, I think the most impact I had were on goals 2 and 3 rather than goal 1. I found it really difficult to manage a classroom of 60 students
Yeah.
in a way that was educationally meaningful for English. There were a couple of other things that I would attribute sort of just a general ineffectiveness to. The main one being the culture around corporal punishment, which was pretty pervasive. So there were other teachers who would carry a stick around as
A
flexible stick that you
Yeah.
could hit students with.
Yeah.
Corporal punishment. And I wasn't willing to do that. There were ways in which I kind of dabbled my toe in things that were adjacent to that when I was sort of at my wit's end. Things like shaming techniques, like puffing a chalk eraser on a student's uniform to make it dirty, which I think was...
Did you do that?
I did that. It was gentler than hitting a kid.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think it was any better. Particularly because often those kids might have been hit by their parents coming home with a dirty uniform, because cleanliness and propriety was a very strong value in Cameroonian culture.
But you had to compromise. I mean, I understand and agree. I don't like corporal punishment, and I wouldn't use it either. But when they say, okay, then you're going to do this, well, like you did.
Yeah, and I did that following explicit advice to use that technique during the training in Bafia from other Peace Corps volunteers.
Oh.
So there were active conversations during the training period of how do you manage. I mean, there were volunteers who had classes that were north of 100 and 150 students for like a 6th grade English class. So
yes.
When I said that I had 60, that wasn't terribly out of. It wasn't as extreme as what other volunteers were experiencing by a long shot.
Did you give any consideration to ever going to the principal and saying, 60 is way too many, we need to cut this in half, let's find another teacher?
No.
No? Why? Was it just totally out of the question?
I think it would have been totally out of the question, unless it was a situation of like I take on an additional class that I'm teaching both of them, just splitting it in half in time. But I also don't know how that would have fit into the school schedule.
Okay.
That's just would not have been consistent with the structure of the school as I think I would have understood it at the time. And I don't know that there would have been a lot of sympathy because there were other teachers in the school who were teaching classes larger than that.
Do you remember any students in particular who were, you thought, highly motivated and really sharp and really picking up on English, and you wanted to motivate them to continue on? You got it.
There's at least one student that really sticks out in my memory, and it was less about English and more about just general performance. I remember having a conversation on the phone with my father, because I had a phone, there was a cell tower, and
wow.
If they called me, then I didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I was talking about, how I know all of these things that aren't really relevant, like the sinking of the Lusitania. When am I ever going to need to know about the sinking of the Lusitania?
Yeah.
And then within another, I don't know if this number is actually true. Within, at least in my memory, within a couple of weeks, I had students stay after class and ask me, what caused World War I? Well, there was this little thing called the sinking of the Lusitania that was really relevant. It didn't start it, but it significantly contributed to bringing the United States into the war. So there was actually a couple of students in that group that sort of stayed behind after class. I think it was the last class of the academic day, so we could linger. I think we had a 20 or 30-minute conversation, and I think that wasn't too atypical for that group of students. One of that student's friends, I remember as very diligent. He was the son of a tailor in town, and I had a couple of things made by the tailor. And he was disabled. He had very significant vision challenges, but was very consistently engaged in motivated to perform well at school.
Were the students, by and large, respectful toward their teachers?
I think there was a pretty big mix.
Yeah.
I think it was safer to be disrespectful to me than other people.
To be disrespectful to you?
Correct.
Did you say? Okay.
I wasn't going to hit them.
Yeah, they knew that.
So I think there were challenges that I had with classroom management that stemmed from the fact that they weren't afraid of me in the way that they were afraid of some of my peer teachers. And I think that that's a way that the system overall didn't set me up for success in a context where I wasn't willing to do the things that other teachers were willing to do.
Yeah.
And this is all in a situation where corporal punishment is illegal in Cameroon in schools. In the whole country.
Really?
Illegal. Pervasive, but illegal. And
how do you account for that? Have you thought about that? How can that be? It's nationally illegal, but pervasive in the schools.
Well, I mean, speed limits are present lots of places, and we started part of the conversation after you got here today talking about how it seems like everybody's speeding these days. So something can be both illegal and commonplace. I think a lot of it was tied to a particular biblical view, and I don't know that this is a scriptural reference, but there was a widespread belief in the idea of spare the rod, spoil the child.
Okay.
Of the importance of discipline through corporal punishment. So I think that's one contributing factor. I also, whenever I mention that corporal punishment was pervasive in Cameroonian schools, I also try and make a point of saying that we might feel superior, but corporal punishment isn't even illegal in 19 states in the United States.
Right.
And I've talked with people, co-workers at OU who in their high school experience in the state of Oklahoma were in a school not 10 years ago that had corporal punishment until they got rid of their policy, but not because it became illegal at the state level, but because the school decided.
Yeah.
So we're not, I don't think we can claim any superiority on that account.
I didn't mean to
I don't think you
that at all.
I don't think you were suggesting it, but I like when I mention that corporal punishment, I think it opens the door for people to think that maybe we're better, but I don't think we are on that account.
Yeah. Okay. Were there other ways that you could see their system needed little tweaking, little changes that you were interested in pursuing and did pursue?
So, I mean, the story of my current research interests are tied to this. I think corporal punishment is a piece of a larger puzzle where, particularly in the French system, often academic performance is motivated through fear. So I'm a motivation researcher in large part because of my experiences in Cameroon and seeing things happen that I think were not supportive of healthy motivation. One of the I don't think I've mentioned this explicitly yet, but I was pulled out early because of security concerns.
What's that? What was that about?
I'll bookmark that. We'll get to it in a moment.
Later.
But I left in the middle of February. I had been pulled out of my post. I went on a trip just before I left, so that was like 2 weeks because I hadn't had the opportunity to travel.
You mean like a vacation?
Much. It was sort of like a vacation, but it was. I had already decided that I was going to leave the country, and I asked for permission to sort of explore some places in the country that I hadn't gone to yet. So that was about 2 weeks.
At what point was this that you were deciding or trying to decide if you're going to leave the country?
This would have been late January 2014.
So how long had you been there?
I arrived June 1st, 2012, so...
Oh, a while.
Yeah. So I ended up leaving the middle of February, which I think is about 20 and a half months is my count. But the reason I mention this is because just the end of the academic term before I left, so I kind of went on Christmas break for the academic year, did some traveling in the country, went back to my post. The spring term was about to start, and it never really got an opportunity to start before the refugee crisis began. And that was really what precipitated the security concerns over my staying in my post.
A refugee crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And regime change across the border in the Central African Republic. At the end of that fall academic period, the principal brought students in, or the discipline master. All of the teachers at the school were standing around the edge of the principal's office, and the students are being brought in to answer for various disciplinary infractions. They're made to, and this is just the male students, made to lie on their stomachs on the floor, which is dusty, so it's the dirty uniform insult.
Yeah.
And then there were the typical punishment was a certain number of strikes across the butt with something like an Ethernet cable. It was a wire about that thickness.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just the physical pain, it's also
humiliation.
This is humiliation, this is a spectacle. All of your teachers are standing around watching you, myself included. I think that might have happened more than just that term. I'd been there for a whole academic year already.
Yeah.
Without seeing that. I think maybe I was called to that meeting in a way that I hadn't been before. Probably because they were cautious. Probably the principal would have been cautious about including me in that. I don't know why I was
The
that.
principal knew that you were against corporal punishment, right?
Right.
Unless he was wanting to rub your nose in it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was also the Peace Corps was aware of the presence of like a cultural affinity for corporal punishment in schools. Mm-hmm. So that was conversations that we would have. We had them in training when we were talking about classroom management, and the line was just don't do it. Like that can be grounds for separation from the Peace Corps.
If
I did it.
Yeah, if you did it.
And we also were told that it was illegal, but pervasive. So we knew that going in.
On the other hand, though, you aren't there to change their behavior, are you?
Not necessarily.
That's not your. There's no order for you to do that. So you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't on corporal punishment.
Yeah, that was one of the toughest things, and having witnessed that, I would say it was traumatic to watch it, and it might have precipitated a conversation about whether I wanted to stay independent of the crisis that came up, but it kind of became irrelevant given the crisis.
Well, why did the crisis? These are refugees streaming into your town, right? Why did that trigger your desire to leave?
So it wasn't my desire to leave. It was an assessment that the Peace Corps administration made.
Oh, they did.
Right.
We got to get you out of here.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't choose to leave.
Oh, okay.
It was an early close of service due to Peace Corps security concerns.
All right.
I had input into that process. So there's a lot of context. So I get to my post in September of 2012. Things are smooth. In March of 2013, there's spring break, and I leave to travel to go see other parts of Cameroon. Education volunteers, we were more restricted in when we could travel because we were bound by the academic year. So I took advantage of spring break to head to the Anglophone regions, visit other volunteers and places. There had been rumblings of like a rebel group wanting to march on the capital of the Central African Republic. And just in general, the security status, the stability of the Central African Republic government was shaky. So they didn't have good security along their western border with Cameroon, Cameroon's eastern border. And that allowed like different factions to operate in that area. So what happened was the day I left early in the morning. Whenever I took a bus, because again I can't travel at night, so I need to arrive before late afternoon sometime, and it's going to take 8 hours to get there. So you got to leave at 6 or 7 a.m.
Yeah.
I left that morning, and then that evening there was somebody had been stopped and held at the police station trafficking arms into the Central African Republic. And their group, whoever this person, the group that they belonged to, came into my post and had intelligence to know where individual police officers lived and were pinning them down with gunfire at their houses.
Wow.
Automatic weapons fire for some period of time over that night. And this is the night of the day I left. So I left early morning, and this happened after dark that night.
Later that night?
Yes.
Okay.
12, 14 hours apart.
And you heard about it?
And I heard about it when I got home.
Yeah.
At the end of spring break. And it was an isolated incident. There was a conversation that I had with the country director and some other folks.
Did anybody get killed?
Nobody that I remember got killed. Okay. But the person who was jailed got busted out. And they were happy to just have their person free.
Yeah.
So that's a thing that happened. I got back, heard all the rumors that were going around town about it, didn't feel unsafe, but 9 months later...
Now you're back in Oregon at this time.
No.
No, where are you?
Huh?
I don't understand.
So...
they wanted you out of the country, it sounded
at
like.
the end. So we're not there yet. We're about 9 months shy of me leaving the country. Oh. So I arrive at my post September 2012. This security incident happens in March of 2013. I continue in my post for about another 11 months. During that period of time, we've got a rebel group that's marched toward the capital of the Central African Republic, Bangui. The government of the Central African Republic makes a deal with that group of people that they're going to be folded into the security forces of the country. It's a good job to have in a lot of these African countries because the army gets paid first for what may be obvious reasons. The government in Bangui did not make good on that promise, so eventually the rebel group marched to the capital and deposed the government. And that's happening around the same time this incursion in March. The chaos around that is probably part of what allowed that to happen. So the president of the Central African Republic flees and probably flies in a helicopter right over my post and lands in Baturi, which is the sort of the county seat again, 4 hours away, the midpoint of my bus ride to the regional capital. Then this group that is primarily not composed of people, as I understand it, from the Central African Republic. It's mostly people from, I think, Uganda, maybe?
Yeah.
I think primarily Muslim. They take power and they proceed to not treat the Christian majority of the country very well. And for 9 months they're in power and just increasing abuses of the Christian population. And then this sort of grassroots militia movement ousts them, and they flee, And in the process, they take out their anger at the abuse they experienced on the native Muslim population, which causes a huge internal displacement and external displacement. So from the first part of January to the time I left, about 10,000 people crossed the border where I lived, at least. And it was only a place of 10,000 people. There was a UN refugee camp that got set up within about 20-30 minutes further into Cameroon than Kenzu. And I think it was up for close to 10 years. I think it's been dismantled as a camp now because the Central African Republic is calmer and a lot of those people have been able to return home. But the fear at the time was that there might be people who are militants who are hiding amongst the refugees, who would leap at the opportunity to kidnap an American for ransom. So when my postmate at the time and I were pulled to have a meeting at the national headquarters, and in that meeting, one of the questions the country director asked was, do you feel safe at your post? And my response was, I feel safe. If I was you, I wouldn't. If as a volunteer, speaking from my individual perspective, I felt fine. Embedded in a community, I trusted the community to protect me. If I was imagining myself in the role of the country director making a decision, I would close the post. Regardless of my internal perspective as the volunteer on the ground. So, they closed the post.
So you gave the answer that would get you out of there when you didn't even want to go.
I wasn't saying that I wanted to go for sure. That was definitely a moment of me trying to imagine what I would think if I was in the risk management role of country director.
Yeah, but you gave a very honest answer to him when what you were saying was not in your best interest.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way of describing it.
I think it is too. Did you think about it like that at the time? Did you think to yourself, now he's asked me this question and damn it, I got to be careful here, or I'm going to wind up home?
The country director at that time was Jacqueline Sasonga. She herself was a former volunteer, and I think had married somebody from her host country. So I think she had a lot of empathy for our position. A thing I think I'm often very good at is separating my perspective from, I think, a larger perspective that is useful to a conversation. So I'd say that's really what I was doing. It's possible that I was also influenced by that recent experience of witnessing the corporal punishment, that there were other aspects of that experience acting on me. I think not in a major way. I think I was mostly thinking of the security situation. There were other pieces of information in the lead up to my departure. There were some other border incursions about 150, 200 kilometers north. There were some rebels who crossed the border at night and did a targeted killing of the police chief of the Cameroonian city. So that was a big part of the conversation. And
it was, but still, you told the director when you were asked, "Do you feel safe?" You said yes.
I think part of that's also that I couldn't necessarily trust my feelings, right?
Oh, okay.
Sort of the emotional experience of feeling safe in a place, especially in that place, in that moment in time, was tied to a community that was changing rapidly.
Yeah.
Like, all of these people that I trust to act in my interests, part of that was, I had seen that in action. There was one person who was unhoused in town and was known to be a drug addict. He was often a day laborer. He would rent push carts and move around goods for merchants. Mm-hmm. And there was one day he was kind of harassing me, and my friends were witnessing it, and they were like very forceful that they would like get the police to beat him if he didn't leave me alone. So I mean that's the kind of thing that I knew I had integrated into the community in a way that they had genuine care and concern
Absolutely.
for me. But that doesn't mean that somebody can't come to my house in the middle of the night because they know where I live and bypass all of that sort of built-in community safety, particularly when there's 10,000 new people in town.
Absolutely. And you're the white guy and you're rich. Everybody knows that. He's rich.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Very good point. What then happened? Where did you wind up?
So that conversation probably took place toward the end of January. No, maybe the earlier to middle parts of January.
Of
2014. Because again, we were just about to start the spring academic semester, and sort of the timeline of events, I think on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, we got a call from somebody at the Peace Corps headquarters. I'm not sure if it was the country director or someone else. Mm-hmm. Might have been the country director, but we were being summoned to the national capital to have a meeting about the security status of our posts and whether we should remain there.
Right.
So we knew that meeting was coming. The meeting was going to take place, I think, on Sunday or Monday. So we were traveling. We made plans to travel on Saturday, bought bus tickets. It's Friday evening. I am out in the marketplace. I'm going stall to stall to all of my merchant friends. I spent a lot of time in the marketplace, like hours and hours and hours.
Because you enjoy it?
Because I enjoyed it. A lot of the merchants were my friends, and I would just sit and drink tea with them. They would spend their little 10-cent tea and buy tea for me and feel good about buying something for the American.
Sure.
And wouldn't necessarily let me reciprocate very often.
Uh-huh.
So I was making a point of going through it. There were about 8 or 10 places that I would go and see and sit with and talk with for hours.
That's great.
Again, goal 2, right? I think I did really well with goal 2, and the newsletters I sent home were a pretty good effort at goal 3. Mm-hmm. But in this particular moment, I couldn't tell them that I might not be back, right? I'm going to this security meeting. They might determine that it's too dangerous for me to even go get my stuff.
You could tell them that. You could have told them that.
The advice was not to.
By Peace Corps?
By Peace Corps, because we were leaving a bunch of stuff in our houses. Maybe we come back and we resume work at our posts.
And you're wiped out. Is that the idea?
The idea was that there might be looting of our stuff.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
If we tell people that we might not be coming back, and then if we do come back, where's our stuff?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point.
So I wasn't telling people, and I didn't know what the answer was. I didn't know because we hadn't had the meeting yet. So I was kind of making a point of spending time with all of the people I wanted to spend time with that I might not see again ever.
Well, where were you? I mean, did you call this a 50-50 proposition at the time that you'd be gone? Yes or no?
I think it was more likely that I think I would have told you it was more likely than not that the post would have been closed.
Okay.
But
you weren't sure. So.
Wasn't sure. But there's a particular moment. I'm at the marketplace. I'm at actually one of the bus stations, speaking to my friend who runs the bus agency, and we see a truck go by, an army truck go by, just like a Ford pickup. They're all painted green for the army. It's empty. There's nobody in the back of the truck, and it's not driving toward the border. So everybody's on edge. Like all of the merchants, the refugee crisis hasn't really started in full yet. That really happened after I left for the security meeting. There are some people trickling across, but just not many. So everybody's really paying attention to this truck, but everybody's relaxed because the truck is not going to the border. About 15 minutes later, the truck is going by the other direction. Now it is going toward the border, and it's full of soldiers in the bed of the truck. And immediately I work the rumor network, talk to my friend at the bus agency, and he's calling people he thinks might have information. And what we hear is there might be a border incursion. There might be rebels crossing over from the Central African Republic into Cameroon, and that these soldiers are going to reinforce the border.
And how far are you from the border?
7 kilometers.
Oh, real close.
Real close, like 3 miles.
Yeah.
So I haven't really done my packing yet, and I'm in the marketplace. I call my postmate to tell her what I've heard, and I go to not the bus agency, but usually there's somebody with a car who's ready. It's much more expensive. Bus tickets, I don't know, $1 or $2, and a car ride would be $10.
And what are you making at this point?
Much more than that. It wasn't a financial hardship.
Were you making $100 a month? I mean, as a teacher, with.
Oh, we weren't paid through the school. We were paid the living stipend through Peace Corps.
Okay. Well, mine was $35 a month. What was yours?
I think it was closer to $200 a month, and I saved a lot of that.
Yeah, there wasn't any place to spend it, right?
Well, there were some bars where you could buy warm beer. But I lined up one of these cars. I lined it up to be on standby to leave with my postmate and I at a moment's notice if necessary.
Right. What was going to be if necessary?
Well, if I have reports that there's rebels coming into town.
Well, they're 7 kilometers away from town at that point.
Yeah. It turns out that wasn't actually the case.
Oh.
But we didn't know that.
Oh.
So I go home, I start stuffing things, the bare essentials into a backpack to be ready to go to this car if I get a call from somebody, from a friend in the marketplace that it's really time to leave. And I call Peace Corps headquarters to let them know what's going on, and just so that they're aware. They don't particularly have any direction. And then I get a call from a friend in the marketplace. There was no border incursion. There were shots fired. The shots were fired in the air as celebration at the news that the Muslim rebel government had fallen.
Oh, okay.
And it makes sense that the Cameroonians would want to reinforce the border, but it wasn't actually a real threat. So once we heard that, I told my postmate, told Peace Corps headquarters, and we resumed our original plan to take the bus the next morning. But that was a pretty exciting about 45 minutes.
No, I guess so.
I think I called my parents in there too, and it's like 2 or 3 a.m. where they were on the West Coast. I think I told them something along the lines of, I might need to flee. So,
and they turned over and went right back to sleep, I'm sure.
I don't know that it would have been an easy sleep if they did.
No, no, I was kidding. So the incursion is not taking place, but you're still leaving.
Right.
Why?
You mean in terms of the decision to close the post?
Yeah.
That was really about longer term security concerns. So the border incursion possibility was really about just in that flash moment of that afternoon. Are there people who are invading? Do we need to flee for our lives? Versus there's a huge influx of refugees. Do we trust the security situation that you will be safe on an ongoing basis?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're changing posts.
So they gave me an opportunity to change posts when they determined that they would close my post, and I was normal duration of Peace Corps service at that time would have been 27 months. So 3 months of training plus 2 years of service, and the other piece of common wisdom was it takes about 3 months to integrate yourself into a community, and it takes about 3 months to get ready to leave. So if I had gone to a new place, I would have had just enough time to integrate into the community, and then just enough time to get to leave without necessarily much in the middle. So based on where I was, I chose not to take a new post, even though that was offered as an option. My postmate, who had arrived about 6 months prior to the close of our post, chose to stay, and she was moved elsewhere.
Okay. So when did you know what they intended you to do had you taken that other post? Was it another teaching job similar to the one you wanted?
It would have been another teaching position, I'm sure.
Okay. So sounds to me like you were psychologically ready to leave.
I think there's some truth in that, for sure.
Okay. Did you have plans for getting back to the States? Had you about your career? What would your career be?
No. I didn't have lots of plans. I ended up working in wilderness therapy. I think I mentioned that briefly previous. So there is a friend of mine, and we're still friends to this day, from my undergraduate college who had worked that position, and I had there's a little, it's a text box of a social media site. You get a text box and that's all. And my friend would use that to basically describe what she did at that position. So when I returned from Peace Corps Cameroon, that's what I was interested in pursuing.
When you returned to Cameroon?
When I returned from Cameroon.
Yeah, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. What do you think are the most lasting benefits that you've gotten from your Peace Corps experience in Cameroon?
Probably a wider perspective on what the world is and what it's composed of. A common question when I mention that I was a Peace Corps volunteer, a common question I get is, "What was that like?" And
Yeah.
I don't really have an answer.
No,
My answer is it's too big of an experience to give a simple answer to.
absolutely.
And part of that is that there's not really an analog prior to my time in the Peace Corps for the experiences that I had. There were just a bunch of new things that that were not in anything I would have ever considered. I mean, a really small example of this is a really casual kind of physical intimacy that would be taboo here in the United States in a lot of places, but it's very commonplace in Cameroon for Muslim men to hold hands with each other walking down the street, and it's a sign of affection. There's no romantic component to it. It's just a mark of friendship, and given the way homosexuality is often viewed in the Muslim faith and in Cameroonian culture, it's illegal by law in the country of Cameroon to be gay.
And is that one that they enforce?
They do enforce that. There was a volunteer near the end of my time that had to be evacuated at approximately the same time I left because of sort of scandals around this person's sexuality.
Oh.
That had gotten out into the community where they lived.
That's interesting. You mentioned that about men holding hands, and it's not romantic at all. It's just cultural. In the Philippines, men would hook their little fingers while they walked down the street. And that's all it was, just a sign of friendship.
Right. So that's the kind of thing where if all you've ever known is that like that kind of physical intimacy is suggestive of something more than friendship, then it can be pretty weird and jarring to be in a place where that it doesn't have that implication. And there's probably 1,000 more small examples of things like that.
Oh, sure.
That I would have experienced. They all kind of nudge you that the way you experience the world isn't the way the world is. It's just the way you experience it.
When you knew I was coming, I was going to ask you all these intrusive questions. Did you think about some things that you really wanted to say, and I haven't allowed or haven't read into that?
No, I mean I prepared all of these objects that aren't in camera.
Okay. Well, if you'd like to show some of them, and
sure.
Especially if there's a story behind them.
There's a story behind most of them. But how about I give you the choice? What of these objects stands out to you to ask about?
Well, I think these masks right here.
Sure. So if you hand them to me, I'll hold them up for the camera.
All right.
So we've got just a series of clay masks. These are pretty common in, I think, across Central Africa as an art form.
Closer, please. There, that's better. Like that.
So you would find these often in like markets that cater toward tourists.
And they're made of clay?
They're made of clay. These ones are. I'm not sure all of them are. I think there's ones that are wooden as well.
Is it just art, or is it cultural too?
I think there's probably a cultural component. I don't know that I would have the expertise to speak too much on that.
Yeah.
But one of these masks has a note in it because it was a gift from another volunteer. We did a Secret Santa. So we had our 3 months of training, and then we left in September of 2012 to start service at our post.
Uh-huh.
And then in December of 2012, we reassembled for another, I think, week or 2 weeks of training. Now that we'd had a taste of our post, and I think the first week of that training, or the first portion, whatever it was, you brought your partner, your homologue, which was sort of the person you worked with most closely at your post, and they joined for part of that training. But during that training, we also, just volunteers, we drew names for each other, and we brought gifts from wherever we were, and one of these masks was a gift, and the note that accompanied it was, "Jacob, Merry Christmas, buddy. I know things have been tough the past few days, but just remember you have an amazing Peace Corps family who is here and loves you. I hope you enjoy the gift and get some use out of it." It also came with a bottle opener.
Oh, that's great. What a wonderful note.
The context for that note is that that was the very end of my grandmother's life. So while I was at this training, I got word that my grandmother's health was failing, and she ultimately decided not to continue care. So that's when I got the news. So it was nice to have the news come during that week that I was sharing with all of these other volunteers.
Yeah, it sure was.
And we were in tropical paradise at the time.
Tropical? What do you mean by that?
We were the location for that particular training event was on the coast.
Oh,
so we were on the beach.
You were in a tropical paradise.
Yes. So this is a basket. I think I got this basket during the visit from my parents. So this would have been the summer of 2013. I actually left Cameroon to go to France, where I have family, and my parents came to France. We spent some time there, and then the three of us all went back to Cameroon from France, and I toured them around Cameroon.
Gosh, what a great...
Yeah, and they were really nervous, especially my dad, about the trip. He wasn't sure what it was going to be like coming to Africa, but they came away from that trip feeling a lot more confident in my safety after. So the picture that I held up earlier is me and my parents in Kenzu.
Yeah. Boy, that's wonderful.
And this came from, I believe, like a prominent craft store that catered to like tourists, people coming from out of the country, in Bamenda, which is sort of the economic center of the Anglophone part of Cameroon.
Okay.
And this ceramic mug was also something that came from that same shop.
Okay. Well, I can't not show these flashy things.
Sure. So this is one of my favorite pieces of clothing. Not the favorite piece of clothing, but this
that is neat.
Sort of a tunic with a dragonfly print, and it's a little harder to see, but in the blue there's also sort of a flower pattern.
Okay.
So it's dragonflies and flowers, and it has matching drawstring pants, which are something I actually end up wearing more than the top these days. These are very comfortable.
I think that's terrific. I would wear those too.
Yeah, they're also, it's just a very comfortable feeling fabric. The favorite piece of fabric clothing that I brought back is this jacket. So I got this fabric hooded jacket. And what happened was I had the fabric because I really like the pattern. This is one of a kind. And I took it to a tailor in the capital city just a couple of days before I left the country. And I took him a picture of a hoodie. And I said, I want a hoodie out of this fabric. And it was probably more expensive than most other things that I have from Cameroon.
Well, what a keepsake that is. Terrific.
A couple of other of my favorite possessions from Cameroon. I have this necklace. So this was made by a silversmith in Garoua, which is the capital of the regional capital of the North region. And it's a set. It comes with this silver ring as well.
Okay. There we go.
And the set is actually all three of the items. It's the medallion and the ring and the chain. I think the silversmith gave the chain job to the apprentice because it's really repetitive and painstaking and maybe not the most fun.
Huh.
But it's in a Tuareg style, which is an ethnic group in Mali.
Huh. Okay.
And I sat with him while he made it. It took him a couple of days, and I probably spent a good 5 or 6 hours one of the days watching him work.
Oh, wow.
Now you have a knife.
Which you dug out of your back one night, right?
No. This knife is from a blacksmith in Kenzu. It's probably made from repurposed truck parts. Because trucks would break down, the big logging trucks, and then there wouldn't necessarily be a way to repair it. Sometimes you could, but it might break down, and then it's just a piece of junk. So they would get stripped and repurposed for things. So this was from a blacksmith who was a disabled man. He had deformities of the legs and walked around on crutches, and he had a little stand in the marketplace where he would turn like a bike wheel crank that would run a bellows, and he would make knives. And the other main thing that I know that he made a lot was mouse traps.
Oh.
And he would sell them incredibly cheaply.
Were there a lot of mice over there?
There were mice. And he was probably making just barely subsistence wages from that work.
Yeah.
And this was sort of one of his nicer knives. Most of them had leather handles, but this was sort of
that's
something.
A great one.
I use it as a letter opener. It's a great letter opener. It's one of the things I use on a semi-daily basis. That kind of is a moment that I can think back to Cameroon.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Well, all right. I think that's going to do it.
Okay.